the recording of this event with everyone who both registered and attended after the event is over. So we are now officially recording. And for those of you who are joining us, thank you so much for spending your Friday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are with us. If you have any questions throughout our webinar today, please don't hesitate to enter them into the Q&A area on the right-hand side of your screen. And we're also accepting chat notifications. Throughout today's webinar, we will be offering some polling questions to gather feedback from you. And we also recommend any feedback or thoughts you might have entered into the chat. If you have any questions for our presenters, this is a great way to request those questions be asked throughout the session. And we're also answering questions individually within the Q&A box of your webinar setting. And it still looks like we have a number of attendees that are joining, so give us one more minute to allow for everyone to join the webinar, and we will begin shortly. And just a quick note to everyone, in our WebEx system, if for any reason you'd like to zoom in on the screen share, on the left-hand side of your screen share box, there are zoom in and out buttons. You can use these to enlarge anything that we're sharing on the screen. It's a great functionality once we go live and connect, and you can also expand the view of our slide deck that we'll be using. All right, wonderful. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're at. My name is Lauren Shore, and I'm the Executive Marketing Manager for the Accounting Portfolio at McGraw-Hill Education. I'm joined by my amazing counterpart, Noelle Bathurst, who is our Senior Portfolio Manager, and also our renowned author, Pete Brewer. Pete, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Today's webinar is all about our phenomenal market-leading franchise in managerial accounting, which encompasses our Garrison, Brewer, and Noreen titles. Today, we're going to be focusing on managerial accounting for non-accounting majors with our amazing Garrison franchise author, Pete Brewer. We'll be focusing on our Noreen title and also student learning in Connect. We'll be doing some live demonstrations throughout, and we'll also be ending our webinar with a little bit of what's coming in our next iteration of this franchise. We'll be asking you for some feedback on our product development. With that, I'm going to hand things over to our phenomenal author, Pete Brewer, and we're going to go ahead and begin our event. And just a quick note for anyone who might be having audio issues. You'll notice at the bottom of your screen is a button that says mute or it says audio. If you click the arrow next to it, you can select to choose an alternate audio option and you can actually dial in. So if you are having any audio issues, just choose to select that option instead. And with that, we're going to hand things over to Pete.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. So Noelle, feel free to cruise on to the next slide for us. And so, as many of you probably know, the Garrison franchise consists of 3 books. We have our Managerial Accounting, Garrison, Noreen Brewer, kind of called the Garrison book in our industry, and that's in its 17th edition. And then the Introduction to Managerial Accounting in its 9th edition, known as the Brewer book. And today we're here to talk about Managerial Accounting for Managers in its 6th edition, called the Noreen book. So one question we often get around these 3 books, and you can flip to the next slide, Noelle, is so how does the Noreen book differ from the other 2 books in the franchise? And so I guess I'm going to take you back to, we're in our 6th edition, so it's been a while, but I remember sitting in a symposium with customers talking about the franchise, and my friend Tim Verdebeck was there. I can't remember who else was there, and we were brainstorming ideas how to make this franchise better still. And the customers kind of came together around this idea of, wouldn't it be great if you had a book that took the financial accounting chapters out? That would be, you know, kind of the job order costing journal entry piece, process costing, statement of cash flows, financial statement analysis. Wouldn't it be great if you had a book that took that out and really just placed the focus with laser precision on managerial accounting for managers, or as that previous slide said, thinking of it almost as, you know, the real managerial accounting for non-accounting majors, i.e. future managers. And so this book dropped all those chapters. And then another big difference with this book, which I like, is we have front loaded all the chapters that really focus on decision making. So the chapters on differential analysis and capital budgeting have been moved up. So for example, in Garrison 17E, the differential analysis chapter is chapter number 13, but in the Noreen book, it's chapter 6. And capital budgeting is chapter 14 in the Garrison book, but chapter 7 in Noreen. So we've really front loaded all the good stuff, because when I teach my MBAs, which I'm doing right now, I have an online class at Wake Forest with 100 MBAs. I mean, I tell them, at least in my opinion, the most important thing I'm going to teach them is decision-making skills. And that's what this book is about first and foremost. So that's a thumbnail sketch of how this book differs from others in the franchise. So we can proceed, Noel, to the next slide. And so now that we've kind of talked about Noreen and how it differs a little bit, let's talk about some of the exciting ways I think you can use this book to be successful in your classroom. And Connect is instrumental in that. And as we proceed through these bullet points that we're about to walk through, I want you to understand there's a logic to their progression. Okay, so we're starting out with this bullet point saying building the foundation. What we're really talking about, the foundation, speaks to what's been a consistent challenge for professors, not only in the 18 years I've been involved in textbook publishing. I'm guessing if we could resurrect accounting professors from the 1800s, they would say the same thing. And that is, how do I get students engaged when they come to class? It's the $64,000 question. How do I get them engaged? So when we talk about building the foundation, we're talking about how Connect can help you craft assignments that will ensure your students come to class ready to engage with the material. And so the first major bullet point is going to be building the foundation. It's kind of that pre-class perspective. Then later on, you'll see our next major bullet point says, all right, if we figured out how to get them to come to class, just hold on one second, Noel. If we figure out how to get them to come to class prepared, then how do we really engage them in deep dive during class? And then the next major bullet point that we'll see later, no need to flip on. The next major bullet point we'll talk about after class. How do we help them solidify their knowledge prior to taking an exam? So there's a major progression that we're walking you through here: pre-class, in-class, post-class, right? So right now we're kind of in that pre-class conversation, and SmartBook 2.0 is a fantastic asset to get students familiar, I think, primarily with the concepts. That doesn't mean there aren't some questions that might require calculating numbers, but I think it's first and foremost about that conceptual footing. And SmartBook can be used in a lot of different ways, but one way I like to use it is pre-class preparation. It uses many cycles of questions limited to 5 concepts at once. The questions are different, but they relate to the same concept, and it's called SmartBook for various reasons, one of which is the system is tracking how the student's performing. So once a student masters a concept, it's a smart system in that those questions will disappear. Conversely, where the student's struggling, it's a smart system. The system knows that and says, so let's throw more questions at them related to their trouble spots. And then eventually it will signal to the student, hey, you've achieved mastery. And so to me, SmartBook is great for getting students prepared for class. So that's one great asset you can use to tackle that challenge of how do I get them to come to class with some foundational knowledge of what we're going to talk about. Now, beyond SmartBook, so you can go to the next slide, Noel. Beyond SmartBook, there are some other great assets, okay? So we have concept overview videos and guided examples. So let's talk a little bit about each of those in some of our subsequent slides. Okay, so concept overview videos, they are available in Connect. They're animated and they're narrated and they're interactive multimedia content. So I always like to put concept overview videos out there for my students. And sometimes I'll use them as an assessed assignment, but to be honest, there are sometimes I'll put them out there as an optional learning asset. I'll say, look, I'm not going to assess it, but I respect that we have learning style diversity among our students. And some people maybe are old school and like to read the book, but a lot of people, and I would include myself in this population, I love video content. And so if you like narrated, animated explanations, try these concept overview videos, right? So I've put them out there as optional, but they're also readily assignable because they include assessment questions. So you can assign them, assess them, and it's one more way of helping, I like to say, hardwire the right behaviors in our students. When you create SmartBook assignments and concept overview video assignments that are due before they walk in the classroom, you've created an incentive, because they impact the grade, for the students to exhibit the correct behaviors, which is preparing for class. So these concept overview videos are wonderful. So we can click on Noel. But I want to say there's also another asset that is new to Noreen 6E. And I suppose I'm partial to this. I love the concept overview videos. Okay, make no mistake about that. But I'm the author, and these say author narrated videos. Why wouldn't I like them? I'm the one who created them, so I'm biased. So we do have new author narrated videos, and I have created for every chapter a chapter overview video and then one video per learning objective. And these videos run 3 to 8 minutes. And what's great about them is each video that pertains to a learning objective really divides into two key components. First is a conceptual explanation of what the learning objective is about. And then second is always a narrated numerical walkthrough. So the student gets the concept and the application in 3 to 8 minutes. And so, as I said earlier, I'm teaching 100 MBA students at Wake Forest right now. They love these author narrated videos. I have them out there and I tell them, I recommend it is your starting point for accessing the learning objectives in the chapter, and they love them. I highly, if I could give you one huge piece of advice for Noreen 6E, it's take a few minutes and look at these author narrated videos. I promise you, they will help your students learn this material. Okay, so that's great. We got concept overview videos, which are wonderful, and author narrated videos, which also have assessment questions baked in them. Two great assets. Give them a look, pick the one that works best for you. Now, beyond that, I think our next slide, I'm hoping, is our guided example slide. These things are fantastic, right? Because again, you can use them a lot of different ways. I like to use them before the student comes to class. So if you think about this learning progression, step one is the student has to get familiar with the material. Then they got to really engage it in the classroom. Then eventually, through homework, they got to fly on their own and figure out how to do these without assistance. But you got to walk before you can run. So if you say the first thing I got to do is learn how to do them with some assistance, the guided examples are fantastic. So you can assign those before class to say, here's a numerical scenario. And if you can solve it on your own, great. But if you cannot, you can click on this link and we will walk you through how to do it with a different set of numbers. And then you just got to replicate it. Okay. And plus we have hint videos that I've created that come in very handy as well for a lot of our EOC. So again, more assets. There is just a bevy of assets that I think plug in to solve the problem of how do I get students to arrive to class with some foundational knowledge so we can have meaningful value-added conversations during class. So let's proceed to the next slide. And so sure enough, remember I said that there's a progression to these main bullet points. So we finished our conversation on assets that are particularly useful for getting students to come to class prepared. Now, let's talk about engagement, right? And if you've done all this building the foundation stuff, now you can start to migrate a little bit more towards kind of a flipped classroom, deeper dive type environment. And we've got a bunch of market leading end of chapter materials that work in an online environment, a hybrid environment, face to face, a lot of good assets. So let's talk about some of them. So the first one, and I created these, I forget, it hasn't been all that long they've been a part of this franchise, and the feedback I think has been very, very positive on the foundational 15. Because I set out to say, why don't we create an exercise with a very succinct set of data? So the foundational 15s, it's always about succinct data. And then how do I build 15 questions around that that touch on all the learning objectives in the chapter? And professors really like that. So it's a great asset. So, for example, if I'm teaching chapter 1 in the Noreen book, which it's a challenging chapter, in that I was just talking to my MBA students a few weeks ago, and they said, that first chapter hits you a bit, like a tidal wave in a sense, because there's 30 plus new vocabulary terms. It's like, hello, welcome to managerial accounting. We're in the pool right now swimming, and we got 30 new vocabulary terms. It's a lot. And so, but what makes it manageable, what makes it doable, is things like smart book to nail down the concepts. And then you can come into class and say, now let's nail these things down quantitatively through the foundational 15. So it's a logical progression that students say, that works. You've got the assets in place to give me the conceptual foundation and then the introductory computational exercise as well. So foundational 15s work great. And beyond that, we have other assets such as integration exercises. So we created integration exercises to really help make the content, I think, more engaging to students, because it's more real world in a sense, right? In a real business context, as a future manager, you're not necessarily going to encounter a lot of decision contexts where your business is polite enough to say, no, I promise this only deals with chapter 4 from that managerial course you had a few years ago. That's not the way it works. It's a little more messy than that. And to make an intelligent decision might require pulling ideas that you would have learned for 2 or 3 different chapters back in your undergraduate education. So we said, if that's the way the real world works, then let's create integration exercises that mirror that. And that's what they do. So if we flip to the next slide, Noelle, we just pull some ideas here. So here's integration exercise number 1. So I created this one to help students see how the idea of an activity or spending variance that we cover in our chapter titled Flexible Budget Analysis, how that really does relate in a way to the next chapter on standard cost variance analysis. So this integration exercise helps drive home the point for students that if we introduce standards, we can take a spending variance as introduced in chapter 9 and blow it out into price and quantity variances as discussed in chapter 10. So that's one of our integration exercises. Then we can have integration exercises that deal with, call it an overlap between absorption costing, variable costing, and cost volume profit relationship. So we're merging 2 chapters there. Or cash budgeting, income statement, balance sheet, a statement of cash flow as a ratio analysis. Well, that would fit well for the Garrison book. That's not a perfect example here. But the point being that we're always pulling across chapters and merging them together into one exercise. Okay, so that's where, and I believe Boy, I'm trying to pull this one off the top of my head. There's an absolute minimum of 12 integration exercises in Noreen, I believe is the number. Okay, so give those a look, because if you've built the foundation, then you're going to have some class time to say, let's do a little deeper dive. And this is one of the tools that facilitates the deeper dive. So now what I'm going to do is pitch it back to Lauren to talk through some of the data analytics. I'll just kick it off by saying really quick before I pitch the ball to her. I've got to believe the amount of data analytics content we now have within this franchise, I will gladly, readily stack up against any book in any accounting discipline, period. We have really gone all in on data analytics in 3 different platforms: Excel, Tableau, Power BI. This is exciting stuff. And we have some nice new stuff we've introduced in Noreen as well. But that said, let me pitch the ball to Lauren, who can take it from here.
Thanks, Pete. Although I'm not going to let you off the hook just yet, because we do have some questions for you. And also just an abundance of really phenomenal feedback from attendees coming in saying that they love the integration exercises, the foundational 15. Thank you all for sharing that feedback. It confirms for us that what we're doing is moving in the right direction. We do have some specific questions for you, Pete. The first question is, which of the 3 books in your franchise do you recommend for an Intro to Managerial Accounting course for undergraduates? And any advice for when only 10 to 15% of those students are going to pursue a major in accounting?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think all 3 books can play a role and could work. But I think the appeal of Noreen is that it just takes off the table. So if you look at the second part of that question, do you have any advice for only when 10 to 15% of the students are pursuing a major in accounting? I mean, that's critical, because that's what most of us are facing when we teach introductory managerial. And so one of the big pluses of Noreen is it just takes completely off the table the subject matter that is not pertinent to the 85 to 90% of students who are not going to be accountants. And I think that's part of the beauty of the Noreen book. Now, the other thing I like, again, I think when you're talking about 85 to 90% of students becoming managers, not accountants per se, I think the single most important thing we teach them is decision making. And the Noreen book is laser focused on that. Okay, it's laser focused. So I think all 3 books can work very well. They all have, their subtle differences. Historically, I've taught out of the Garrison book, but gosh, they all work just fine. And so I don't think you can go wrong. I think Noreen, Noreen gets used a lot in MBA programs, but I think it fits in wonderfully for an undergraduate course in managerial accounting, because it's focused on what those students need the most of.
Thanks, Pete. Another question that has come in, any possibility that those new author narrated videos will be prepared for the next edition of the Garrison text?
So that would be Garrison 18E, right?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is absolutely. They're going to be in Garrison 18E.
Fantastic.
I'll just say it one last time really quick. I think they're one of the best learning assets we have available in the Garrison franchise. My students rave about them. So yes, they will be in Garrison 18E. I hope you'll take a look. It's a great learning asset. 3 to 8 minutes. It hits the key concepts, the calculations. It's good stuff.
We tend to agree with you, Pete. Another great question, and I will say this is a question that comes up quite often that we receive from faculty who teach both undergraduate and graduate level courses. So this instructor is saying, I teach both undergrad managerial accounting and a graduate course called Decision Making Tools in Accounting. I use Garrison for the undergraduate level course and Brewer for the graduate level course. That being said, I'm new to teaching, I'm from the industry, and was not sure if the Brewer class was adequate for an MBA student. I hear you said you use it for your MBA class. Do you add anything else? I use Connect and everything to its fullest. And I think this is more of a question around, am I on the right track? Am I using the right books in both courses?
I think they could work now just for what I do, but just because I do it doesn't mean it's, it's written in stone tablets per se. What works for me is, I'm using the Garrison book for my MBA class right now. And what I focus on, it's a 1.5 credit hour MBA. And what I've always focused on in the Wake Forest 1.5 credit hour required MBA managerial course is I do 4 chapters. Chapter 1, Managerial Accounting and Cost Concepts. Chapter 2, Job Order Costing, Calculating Unit Product Costs. Chapter 5, as it's called in Garrison, it would be Chapter 2 in Noreen, Cost, Volume, Profit Relationships. And then I do differential analysis. Those are the key decision-making chapters in my view. And that's what I do in the 1.5 credit required course. Then I've taught an elective MBA for Wake's MBA program, and I do it using Garrison. Big surprise. I just think it's a good book. I'll be darned. And I teach about 4 other chapters there. I pull in a little bit from the variable costing chapter, but I focus primarily in the elective on planning and control, which means we hit the master budgeting chapter, the flexible budgeting chapter. I really don't do much on standard costing. I think that's too deep of a dive for MBAs, but that flexible budgeting chapter is a great one. And then I'll do some coverage of our, well, actually, it's 2 new chapters in Noreen. The Responsibility Accounting Systems chapter and Strategic Performance Measurement. So in the Noreen 6E, one of the biggest change to the text itself. Right now, there's all this great analytics, and I just mentioned my narrated videos, but if you will, kind of on the printed page, so to speak, the biggest change is that we took what used to be called, what was it? Decentralization or performance measurement in decentralized organizations is what the chapter used to be called. We've now split it into 2 chapters. So one is called Responsibility Accounting Systems and one is Strategic Performance Measurement. So in an MBA class, that 2 chapter split out is wonderful, right? It's wonderful. In an MBA class, you absolutely benefit from now having a chapter on strategic performance measurement. I mean, that's a critical topic for managers. And we really expanded our coverage of the balanced scorecard and corporate social responsibility reporting. So maybe I'm officially rambling at this point, but but I think that responsibility accounting strategic performance measurement split that is new to Noreen 6E would work fantastic in an MBA type environment. And that split is not in the most recent edition of Brewer. So if I were to say, this is just my opinion, I think Noreen 6E is probably a better plug-in to an MBA program than Brewer. That's my opinion. I see Brewer's best fit, its real niche at the introductory level, undergraduate type environment, certainly community college type schools for sure, but I'm not sure I see it as much as an MBA. And one of the big reasons is what I just said, right? I think the Noreen book's a better fit. So those are some thoughts, Lauren. I hope that helps.
It does help. And what we're realizing is there are a number of attendees in this webinar that do teach at both levels. We're getting a lot of feedback and more granular questions about content. So I'm just going to really quickly give a shout out to everyone that has attended and is asking these questions. If you are struggling with trying to pinpoint what content and which title is most ideal for an undergraduate managerial accounting course, an advanced managerial accounting course that is still in the undergrad level, and also at an MBA or master's level, you can contact us directly and we can have a one-on-one dialogue and get a little bit more granular with you about the content that you want to focus on, and especially who your students are, because I think that that directly correlates to some of our recommendations. So please don't hesitate to do that. We did have a question come in and ask if these 3 texts designed are ideal for a 300 or 400 level accounting course. And really quickly, I'm going to briefly mention that we do see that Garrison is very often selected, not just in an introduction managerial course, but also utilized in an advanced level course, because it does go into a little bit more of that detailed advanced topical coverage. But Pete, would you like to speak to that at all as well?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. If I were going to try to do it, and again, I'll reflect on what I did throughout my career, because I taught cost accounting for, what would it have been? Was it 19 straight years at Miami University? I don't think a semester went by that I didn't teach cost accounting. So I've done that a fair amount. What I settled on back in, golly, 1997, so I'm dating myself, but it was my 3rd year as a professor, and I really committed to a case study driven approach to teaching cost accounting. And I really developed a custom course packet of materials, which, by the way, back in the day, 97, that was a bit tough to do. Now through McGraw-Hill Create, it's not as tough to do, to go out and get those Harvard Business School publishing cases and so on. So if I were going to try to tackle that, I would use, let's say, Garrison in my introductory course. I could make it work if my students came into cost accounting to say, look, you can stick with Garrison, but we're going to have a real create custom packet of materials to go with it. And so we're gonna revisit Garrison, because let's face it, students finish their 15-week course in managerial, and they might not have cost accounting for a year, let's say, or maybe 18 months. And they come in the course and say, yeah, I kind of vaguely remember what cost volume profit relationships are, but I don't remember it well enough. And so part of what we tend to do is say, all right, let's get the cobwebs out. Let's recollect some of the fundamentals. And so if we still have Garrison at our fingertips, it's great for recollecting the fundamentals. But then what you can do is you could partition that Garrison into chapter content, right? Where you use some of the, I'll say, easier stuff in the undergraduate sophomore level introductory course, but then you start pulling some of the more challenging cases out of the book and Harvard Business School case studies, and you extend through a create packet of interesting cases, and using maybe some of the more integration exercises. Maybe in the cost accounting course, you tackle some of the more challenging data analytics exercises that are in the book. The honest truth of the matter is that the Garrison book, with its assets, which go from elementary and introductory to much more challenging, combined with a create packet of cases, could sustain easily a nice integrated introductory cost accounting 2-course sequence. And if I were asked, how would you tackle it? That's what I would do. That's what I would do. Another thing I would say really quick to Lauren's comment about 3 minutes ago, and I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds here, Lauren and Noel, but also to anybody listening, one question I get a fair amount from people is to say, hey, so Pete, I'm going to be teaching chapter 2 next week. When you teach that, what are your 3 favorite end of chapter exercises? If anybody wonders that, feel free to ask, and Lauren or Noel funnel it to me. I love those questions, because I absolutely have my favorites. I absolutely know, at least in my experience, I think all the exercises are good, but I know which ones hit the nail right on the head and work best for me, and I'm always happy to share that too.
Thank you so much, Pete. And just for anyone interested in taking a look at the Create website that Pete mentioned, I did just add that into the chat, because it is a great way for you to select and choose content from our textbooks and also incorporate cases from places like the Harvard Business Case Selection or Wharton cases, and even more. So that's in the chat for anyone who's interested.
And really quick, Lauren, I'm sorry, just really quick, as you say that, again, one other thing, if anybody's interested and says, that kind of appeals to me, what Pete's saying is a cost accounting course supported by cases. I'm more than happy to say to anybody who's interested, here are cases that I have used in these various chapters that work wonderfully, that really do take it up a notch in terms of it's a little bit more challenging, it's a little more real world. So I can always float out examples of cases that I have used in my classes that work great, because that's half the battle, right? If you go to the Harvard Business School publishing database of cases, it's overwhelming. You say there's thousands of them. How do I find the 5 to 10 nuggets that are going to work in my class? Well, the way you do it is you say, let Pete do that, because I've been teaching these cases since 1997, and I just lived in that database of cases. And if you're really deliberate, you can find those cases that are anywhere from 3 to 8 pages. They're not these 20-page novels that a lot of Harvard cases are. You can find those 3 to 8 page cases that are just right for an undergraduate, and they work. And so I can help streamline your search if you're interested. In a lot of these cases, I also have my lesson plan hardwired. And so if you're intimidated at the thought of, well, how do I teach a case? Honestly, I can help with that too, because there's unique ways that I teach undergraduate cases that work, that students have said over the years, gosh, we like that. It was real world, it was challenging, but you gave us enough guidance that we didn't feel lost. So don't hesitate to ask, what cases do you use? How do you teach them? I'm happy to help with that.
Thank you so much, Pete. That's really valuable. And I think that we are going to lean on you a little bit for that because we're getting requests already.
It's my pleasure.
All right. And with that, I think we are going to move into the second portion of today's webinar, which is all about career readiness and focusing on data analytics and software like Excel, Tableau, and Power BI. So Noelle, if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide. Wonderful. So we know that we don't necessarily have to impress upon you this information around why data analytics is such a big industry trend and that it's here to stay. But I think what we do want to say is at this point, we recognize this isn't a trend, and that ultimately it is becoming more and more so a requirement, not just to prepare students for their ultimate careers in industry post-graduation, but we also recognize that there is a building and mounting amount of pressure on administrators and institutions to really prove that ROI to students on their investment of their degrees. More and more students are really reviewing what that return is going to look like. And a big part of that is taking a look at how are they going to be ultimately prepared for their industry careers, and also what kind of jobs are they going to be able to obtain after graduation. So we're going to focus the rest of our webinar on what kind of content we at McGraw-Hill on the accounting side have been building really to adapt to this now non-trend but a requirement. So we've been building our data analytics content for the past 4 years. We've been curating content that spans the accounting curriculum, not just in managerial accounting, but starting at a principles or introductory level course all the way up into advanced accounting courses, because we recognize that when we talk about career readiness, that's not just tied to one course. So Noelle, do you want to click the next slide? Perfect. Now, for managerial accounting, we have a specific emphasis on Microsoft Excel, Tableau, and Power BI. I will say across our curriculum at McGraw-Hill on the accounting side, our Garrison titles by leaps and bounds have the most robust suite of data analytics content available to students. There has been a huge investment on Pete's end and on our end to make this a distinguishing characteristic in this course, because we recognize that especially when we're talking about how to make business decisions, this type of content truly is going to prepare these students. Next slide. All right, so what does that look like? Our data analytics content types, as you can see on your screen, are presented in a way in which we kind of offer a scaffolded or building block approach to first introducing students to data analytics. So if students have never had any experience on the analytics side, we want to make sure that we give them the opportunity to dip their feet in the water without being intimidated. We do so by offering students exercises and problems that begin with basic visualizations, so data in visualized form. And then we move up our scaffolded approach by offering Tableau dashboard activities, which simply means that we have embedded Tableau dashboards that already have data within those visualizations into Connect assignments. So we're giving students access to a real Tableau dashboard activity with data that they can then manipulate, analyze, and answer auto-graded exercises with. So this is a great starting point for those students. And oftentimes, if we're talking about introducing students to data analytics across the curriculum, this is the type of content you might even see introduced to students in their introductory accounting courses. As we move up and we continue to introduce students to a deeper and deeper experience with data analytics, we offer our applying series of data analytics content. So what that means is we give students accounting-based exercises or cases, and then we ask them to use student versions of data analytics software like Tableau, Power BI, or Excel to work through those accounting-based scenarios, and we provide students with data sets that they then use in those software systems. So it's giving them hands-on training with data analytics software, but through the lens of accounting, through the lens of managerial accounting. And then as we move up the spectrum, we also offer an abundance of robust Excel content for instructors to assign and connect. Things like Excel analytics, where we're not only teaching students the core elements of Excel that they really need to understand to be able to use in their post-graduation careers, but we're doing all of this through the lens of accounting content in their course. So as you can see, this is our scaffolded approach to introduce students to data analytics and then continually build on their skill set and understanding and their ability to both visualize and analyze data and ultimately be able to make business decisions based on that work. Next slide. Now, I mentioned our applying series of content. Applying Tableau is one of the data analytics content types that I'm actually going to go live into a Connect course and showcase. And then, as I mentioned, we also offer applying Power BI. So next slide will mention our newest innovation in data analytics that is specific to the Garrison franchise. Not only do we offer those Tableau cases that ask students to apply our data sets, build dashboards in Tableau, and then answer auto-graded content in Connect, we now offer that iteration of an assignment type utilizing Power BI. And oftentimes instructors will ask us, which one should I use? Should I use both? And that's really an instructor choice depending on what software systems you think are most applicable to your students. And then of course, last but not least, we offer Excel analytics, and we're going to take a deeper dive into what this looks like as well in Connect. So with that, I'm actually going to take back sharing privileges, and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go live and Connect to take a look at what these data analytics content types look like. So give me just 1 second to share my screen and jump over into Connect. And Pete or Noelle, if you can just give me a thumbs up that my screen is showing. Fantastic. Thanks so much. All right, so I am currently in a Connect course. This course is one of our 3 titles in the Garrison franchise. And what we're going to take a look at now is, one, where you can find data analytics content and what it looks like from both the instructor and the student perspective. So if you're in Connect, right now I'm actually using a Garrison course, but this content is going to be live in the newest edition of Noreen as well. You're going to go to your add assignment and open up your question bank. And it is incredibly easy to go in even right now and just review what our data analytics content looks like. You'll see in your question source, we field everything into categories. So we start with categories for specific features that Pete has already spoken to, like our video series. We've got student resources. You'll see data analytics, integrated Excel, Excel simulations. These are some of the core categories that we pull outside of our chapter folders. Now, beyond that, we then organize all of our additional resources by chapter. So I'm really quickly just going to open up chapter 2 so you can see an example that showcases the level of robust content that we offer throughout our Garrison, Brewer, and Norris franchises. Here you'll see a number of these resources that Pete mentioned: concept overviews, narrated PowerPoints. We've got our applying Excel content here, the foundational 15, and more. So you can see that this series of titles truly does offer what I would say is the most robust amount of assignable content of any of our Connect courses across the accounting portfolio. Now, I'm actually going to go return to my table of contents and specifically focus on data analytics. So here you'll see our arsenal of applying Tableau and applying Power BI content. We also offer guides for each one of these pieces of software and our assessments and quizzes. For right now, I'm going to open up applying Tableau so we can take a look at an actual applying Tableau analytics exercise. So I am going to open up one and we're going to look at it from a preview standpoint. And this is the point in our webinar where I again remind you that if you want to zoom in on my screen sharing, it's on the left-hand side of your screen share box, and you can go ahead and zoom in on this content if it's a little bit too small on your end. So ultimately, our applying Tableau analytics content on the instructor side is previewable as you're adding questions to your assignments. So here you can see ultimately that we've got an accounting-based scenario, and through a hyperlink, we offer students that Excel file of big data. Now, if we continue to move through this exercise, what you're going to see is that we expand upon what we ask of students. So this is where we are asking students to go outside of Connect, set up a student version of Tableau. Students have free access to Tableau for 1 year. It's a very quick process to gain access to their platform. And then ultimately, we give students very detailed and granular instructions to take that big data Excel file, load it into Tableau, and then manipulate it to create a visualization Tableau dashboard. So you can see here, we're asking students to create a pie chart in Tableau that shows the percentage of this company's total costs that are product costs and the percentages that are period costs. Now, I've gone through as a student and walked through a number of our applying Tableau cases just to get an understanding of how long it might take for students to accomplish all of these steps. What I can tell you on average for me is it takes about 7 minutes to walk through each of these steps to manipulate and create my dashboard. It's very simple, it's very easy, and we make sure to really split up all of these instructions into very granularized instructions because we want to make sure that we're not overwhelming students as they're going through and setting up, especially their first dashboard. Once students have done that, they're going to be in the live Tableau system with a dashboard that they have created from scratch using all of our big data. And on the instructor side, we give you screenshots of what that dashboard is going to look like. And then ultimately, students are going to walk through those visualizations. They're going to manipulate that data. They're going to analyze it. And then ultimately, they're going to come back to Connect and answer auto-graded questions. So our data analytics content is auto-graded, and that's because we know that as instructors, that's a necessary element to this type of content because we know that you are limited on time. So we've made sure to set up all of these applying Tableau exercises in a way that's simple and easy for students and also time effective for instructors. Now, I did mention when we were in our question pool that we also offer some training videos. So you will also notice that we have Tableau guides available to students that will walk them through what exactly Tableau is and how they're going to utilize it in these courses. Now, I will also mention, because I just saw a question come in via the chat, the question was, do we offer training for instructors? And the answer is absolutely. We have a really robust training and implementation program at McGraw-Hill on the accounting side, where we have power users that are educators across the country that we can pair you with to offer one-on-one trainings and assistance in helping build out your courses to incorporate data analytics and career readiness content. So these are educators that use the product that you're using in your course. They teach the course themselves, and they are Connect Power users. We also, as a team, can offer presentations to departments if you want to, as a whole, start thinking about how to incorporate this content across your curriculum. So we do offer an abundance of training opportunities. And this spring, we're going to start implementing some quick virtual hands-on training workshops specifically tied to data analytics for those of you who would like to dig in. But if you'd like any training right now, just drop a note in the chat or respond to our follow-up information after this webinar, and we'll go ahead and facilitate setting that up for you. All right, so I also mentioned that one of our newest aspects of our data analytics curriculum is applying Power BI. So really quickly, I'm going to open up applying Power BI just so you can see that it's a very familiar setup. All of our applying series of content, so applying Tableau, applying Power BI, and applying Excel, are set up in a very familiar format. So you'll see that we've got our accounting scenario right here. We offer the downloadable Excel file. And then ultimately, if we continue on through this problem, you'll see the same format. The only difference is the visualizations and the instructions are focusing on Power BI in lieu of Tableau. So again, this goes back to whatever your instructor selection is, one versus the other. You can choose your assignment type based on what software you think is best for your students to utilize. So here you're going to see a different type of visualization dashboard because it is coming out of Power BI instead. But ultimately, the assignment itself looks exactly the same as our applying Tableau assignment, just using a different piece of software. Now I'm going to pause right there, and Noelle, I can see chat questions coming in, so I just want to make sure if there's anything really important that I address it right now.
There's nothing that I'm seeing on my end, but if people are just chatting to the host, that might be coming directly to you, Lauren, so I might not be seeing everything that's come in. So.
All right, so really quickly, I'm just going to review the chat, and it looks like we've got a lot of questions coming in about training. So a lot of people saying that they like training. We are saving all of these chat messages, so we will reach out to you individually and set that up. So if you do want that request and you haven't already chatted that in, go ahead and we will follow up with you.
Lauren, can I jump in really quick?
Absolutely.
And just take everything you've said is fantastic and put it into a little bit of a chronological context. So our first data analytics content was entered into Garrison, the 17th edition. And it's the 17th edition that we did the Tableau dashboard activities and the Excel activities, okay? The Excel analytics exercises. And then when we went to our next book in our franchise, it was the Brewer book, we said we're going to carry those forward, but the Tableau dashboard activities we did in Garrison, we always gave the student the dashboard and they just had to interpret. And so we said for the Brewer book, what can we do new above and beyond that cool stuff we did for Garrison? And we said, well, I'll tell you what, let's now have them build stuff in Tableau. And let's kind of mirror the applying Excel feature that's in the book, and we're going to call it applying Tableau. And then we said, well, now wait a minute. If we're going to show them how to do it in Tableau, why don't we take the same exercise and show them how to do it in Power BI and cover all three platforms? And that's what we did. And what I want to make sure we say is, as we now go to Noreen 6E, all of that stuff that Lauren's mentioned flows in Noreen 6E. But in addition, we've gone into every chapter in Noreen and picked 2 exercises in the back of each chapter. And we've created additional data analytics content. One exercise will always be called Calculate and Communicate. And that will be us taking an exercise that appears in the book, and the students will do the same calculations that are shown in the book, but then there will be an analytics visualization add-on where they have to look at a visualization to tell the story related to what they calculated. So there's always one of those in every chapter. Then there's always one that is interpret and communicate. And that's where we manipulate the exercise a little bit to take the calculation piece out and just show them a really good visualization that captures what the story's about, and they answer questions related to that. So understand, Noreen 6E has everything Lauren described, plus 2 new exercises in the back of every chapter. One's called Interpret and Communicate, one is Calculate and Communicate.
Thank you, Pete.
Yep.
All right. So you guys can see the story behind data analytics and this franchise is incredibly robust, and we're continuing to innovate. And I mentioned it earlier, but really this is the franchise that truly is leading the way in regards to what our data analytics content looks like today and how we're continuing to build off of that to make sure that we're speaking to all the data analytics softwares out there and ultimately the kind of experience that students need to be post-graduation ready, to be career ready. Now, a big part of that is also thinking about Excel skills. So you guys might be familiar with our Excel content that we've always offered in the past. We're quite well known for our robust Excel content. We talked about on the data analytics side, applying Excel applications, and also our analyzing Excel content. But we've also always offered what we refer to as Excel simulations. We know that Excel is an incredibly important piece to our accounting courses, especially in managerial accounting. So our Excel simulations have been our core offering to give students the opportunity to work through accounting curriculum and doing so through that Excel lens. Our our Excel simulations are exactly that. They're simulated Excel environment exercises, meaning that we've built a simulation for students that isn't necessarily live Excel, but it gives them the environment to start feeling comfortable with how to utilize Excel. And we've been able to embed some great learning features. So learning support like help and show me tutorials that if you as an instructor enable, students have access to. But in the grand tradition at McGraw-Hill, we are always innovating. And we now have our next iteration of what Excel content looks like and means to our instructors. And that is through an incredible new partnership with Microsoft, where we are now seamlessly integrating Microsoft Live Excel within our Connect platform. So it's the power of Excel and the power of Connect that have been fused together. Now, what this means to you as instructors is it means career readiness. We're giving students access to real live Excel. They're going to have hands-on experience with that software. It means equity for all of your students. They do not need to have access to Microsoft Excel software outside of Connect. We have created these assignments to be auto-graded, so incredibly easy for you to assign. There's no need for manual grading. There's no need for uploading or downloading Excel spreadsheets. And again, no requirement of software needed outside of Connect. And ultimately what that means is students are learning how to use the live software and to build off of their analysis experience. So using Excel to learn how to make good business decisions. All right, I'm actually going to go back really quickly and we're going to take a really quick tour of what this looks like. So if I am a student, and I apologize, I do have to reduce the size of my screen just so I can manipulate things a little bit. There we go. Our new integrated Excel assignments look and feel just like any assignment would on the student side of Connect. So as an instructor, you can assign these integrated assignments. And as a student, I'm going to open them up just like I always would any Connect assignment. I'm going to get my basic information on what this assignment is and how many points are tied to it, due date, how many attempts. And then ultimately, I am going to be hit immediately with a notification around grading policy. And this is really important because you as instructors in these integrated assignments get to choose your grading policy. So you can choose for formulas only or for both formulas and values. And we're going to alert students to what that grading policy is right away. Students are then going to immediately open up their assignment. It's going to pop up in a new tab. And literally, this is live Excel. So they're going to have all of the functionality of Excel. They're going to have all of the help assistance that Excel offers. And ultimately, the assignment is going to be auto-graded based on your grading policy via these yellow shaded cells. So this is the content that's going to be assigned. So students are going to have the entire exercise embedded within their spreadsheet. And they have access to a scratch pad, which is a low stakes learning environment within the spreadsheet, meaning they have a practice area. So they can practice in their scratch pad without any grading. They can test out formulas if they'd like, and then ultimately go back to their assigned cells and enter in answers. The moment a student enters in any numerical value, they can check their work and they can ultimately see if their answers are correct or incorrect. This is really ideal based on your grading policy because it will actually tell students if an answer is incorrect because it's incomplete. That means that they are not following the grading policy that you've set up. Now, as a student, if I wanted to go back into Connect to maybe review my ebook, I could do so. It's in another tab. But if I do that, I'm going to get the notification immediately that I still need to save my work before departing my assignment. And that's really important because sometimes students want to pause, learn a little bit more, and then come back to their work. So I'm reminded that I need to save my work. It's again reminding me of the grading policy, and I can click OK. Now, when I'm ready to submit my work, I do so just like I would any type of assignment, and then I have access to view my results. So ultimately, what I can do is see my grades and my score. And then I can also go back into my integrated Excel assignment, into this spreadsheet, and I can toggle back and forth between the correct answer, or I can toggle back and forth to my own answer. So right here, I'm in the correct answer. And one thing you'll notice is that because this grading policy is by formula, the solution is showing the formula answer and also a common alternative formula answer, because we recognize that grading tolerance is also hugely important. So we worked with Microsoft Excel to ensure that if there are alternate formulas that are acceptable as answers, that we've embedded that into our answer tolerance. Hugely important to instructors, and we recognize that. So I'm going to stop right there. This was just a really quick demonstration of our next level innovation for Microsoft Excel. This is already available in both Garrison and Brewer and is coming to the newest edition of Noreen that is publishing this January, and we're incredibly excited about it. All right, and with that, I know that we're at time, but Pete, is there any chance you might want to just really quickly talk through the Connect Only test bank?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, because I know we're at time, and I'll try to do something here in about 90 seconds. Because the thing is, there's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. And so we had to pick what all we can focus on. And there's still at least 3 topics that are very exciting. The first is the Connect Only Test Bank, where I wrote about 100 questions per chapter. About 30 of those questions in every chapter are conceptual, 70 are computational. And I'm not really going to focus on the slides here as much, just so you know, Noelle or Lauren, I'm riffing here for 90 seconds. So I created 100 questions per chapter, Connect Only. They span from easy to medium to hard, 30 conceptual, 70 computational per chapter. And they're written to purposely be generic, so they're not easily searchable on the internet if somebody has dishonest intentions. So I'm using that Connect Only test bank in all my online assessments. And it's also, what's nice about it is it's a nice fresh set of questions, because our market leading test bank, all those questions were created by my co-authors, and they're fantastic. But I finally said, I want to put my stamp on the test bank, and that's when I wrote 100 questions per chapter. So they're fresh, they're new, and I think they're well worth checking out. Again, not to overstep, but we didn't have time to talk about Proctorio, which is a whole new set of capabilities we have to help professors deal with this idea of dishonest conduct in online assessments. And there's much that could have been said about Proctorio and all that's available. And then the last thing in my 90-second riff here, we didn't get the time to talk about, while I think there's a lot going on right now that's incredibly exciting within the franchise, on the horizon is something that's going to be very exciting. My wife and I are starting a business in Asheville, North Carolina called Howdy Homemade Ice Cream. The mission of the company is to employ adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. My youngest of 2 daughters has autism. She will be our first employee. And so this is a real business. It's an exciting business with a great mission. And I have created an immense suite of assets that are going to become available with Garrison 18E. So we will have something that for 18 years, I've been involved in textbook publishing. People have always said, how about a serial case study that spans multiple chapters? And now we're going to do it with a real company that my wife and I own. And so I think it's one of the most exciting things in our 18 years. So understand, on the horizon is Howdy Homemade Ice Cream, and it's going to be a serial case that's going to be outstanding. So I just tried to pitch those last 3 things, Lauren. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you so much, Pete. And I will just say it again, there is so much for us to cover. We might have to have another follow-up event just to cover some of the things that we didn't get to focus on today, but we're so appreciative of all the questions and engagement that have come in. We just want to thank everyone so much for joining us. We will be saving the chat and Q&A of this webinar, so if you have requested any follow-up, we'll go ahead and be contacting you. And if for any reason you need anything at all, or if there's anything that you do want follow-up on and you haven't made that request yet, all you have to do is reach out to your local McGraw-Hill learning technology representative. They will reach out to our team, and we are here to help facilitate anything that you need to be as successful as possible in using our course materials. So whether that's one-on-one trainings, presentations to a department, connections with our authors, we are here to help. And if there's anything that we can do to support you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. This event has been recorded, so we will also share out the recording and our slide decks to everyone who has joined us today. And again, we're just so thankful for all that you do as educators. We know, especially in the last year and a half, there have been some immense challenges, And we just hope that you all know how appreciative we are for what you do as you impact student lives through learning. Thank you all for joining us, and a special huge shout out to Pete for taking time out of his day to present during our webinar. Pete, we're so appreciative of you as well.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Pete.
Yep.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and we will be following up with a number of you who have chatted us. So have
Take
a
care, everybody. We'll see you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.
Yep. Bye-bye.